unimaginable what these families are going through right now in terms of grieving just for having lost loved ones. I know from conversations that have been had with government officials, with members of parliament, with my deputy prime minister who's been engaged with families in Edmonton, that families are asking for answers, and that's why we are sharing what we know as we can with Canadians right now. But there are many more answers to be given. There's much more to be found out through a complete and thorough investigation that we are certainly pushing for. But we know these families will continue to be going through extremely difficult moments over the coming hours, days, weeks, months, and indeed years, and Canada will be there with them.
Lee Berthune.
Yes, sir. Just wondering, do you regret not pushing harder to restart diplomatic relations with Iran as you had promised in the 2015 election?
I think there were many reasons why Canada has significant issues with Iran and has for a number of years. But in this situation, it is clear that we are coming together in the wake of a terrible tragedy that has befallen Canadians. It has befallen many Iranian citizens as well. One can't forget that the majority of victims on that airline were Iranian citizens. And this is something that binds us together in our grief, and I think the desire for answers from families who lost loved ones is fairly universal. We will be working together in the best ways that we can around this tragedy.
And you mentioned that you had spoken to Prime Minister Rutte. Can you talk about what advice he gave you, given their experience?
He talked a lot about how it is, first of all, important to keep the families who are grieving apprised of information even at preliminary stages, which is certainly something that we are doing today. He also talked about the need for direct and real relationships with all different elements involved in the crash. He talked about the fact that he had multiple conversations with Russian authorities, including Vladimir Putin, in the days following the Malaysian Airlines downing. So we certainly have taken those and other elements seriously. Their path through an international investigation that continues even 5 years later was one that he shared with me, and he of course offered the deep friendship that the Dutch have with Canada to serve, to share expertise and information and support as we embark upon what is going to be a difficult process of establishing the truth and the facts of what happened.
Bruce Campion-Smith.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Just wondering if the government considers this an act of war.
I think it is too early to draw definitive conclusions like that one. That is why we need a complete and credible investigation.
And can you just walk us through when you became aware of these most recent allegations involving the aircraft, and also going forward, what Canada's response? Like, are you going to speak to the leadership of Iran yourself to convey Canada's views on this? And should there be an international commission for an investigation?
We got confirmation over the course of last night and this morning on this particular set of conclusions that I've shared today. But obviously there is much more work to be done, much more data to be analyzed, and that's why the credible investigation is so important. I think there is a call, and there are incidents of tragic crashes like these ones, multiple parties who are mandated to be involved, from manufacturers of the airplane, and with France being the engines of the airplane being manufactured in France, that gives a certain authority for the French to be involved as a part of the international investigation process. Countries that have victims on the plane also have standing in an investigation. Canada, of course, is the country outside of Iran that has lost the most citizens. The country of operation and ownership of the aircraft is also responsible, and that has a responsibility in the investigation, and that involves Ukraine. There are many different international elements in an investigation of this type, and that is what we will be drawing on as we move forward.
Okay, guys, we have time for maybe two last quick questions. So one from Rosemary Barton, and then we'll go to John Iveson.
Prime Minister, obviously you suspected, you feared the worst when you were asked whether you could rule out that this had happened. It may have been confirmed overnight, but you obviously had your own concerns. Can you just talk a little bit about what your reaction was when it was confirmed? Were you outraged? Just explain to me what went through your head, knowing that innocent lives were taken.
My first thought is for the families that we have been getting to know over these past 24 hours through news articles and reports back from various conversations they've had with MPs, with government officials. They are already going through a terrible grieving process, and to further have an understanding that this may have been caused by a surface-to-air missile strike is compounding, and that my thoughts instantly went to how much harder this must make it for those families who are experiencing just a terrible amount of grief right now. Mes premières réflexions sont toujours pour les familles qui souffrent déjà de façon terrible la perte de leur chair, mais de savoir en plus qu'il y a peut-être eu cet élément d'attaque derrière cette tragédie doit être encore plus difficile, et nous allons être là pour eux de tout cœur.
Prime Minister, if it turns out to have been a missile strike, Canada's options would seem to be pretty limited. Is the Magnitsky Act a tool that could be used against individuals who are deemed to be responsible?
I think it is too early to draw conclusions on what tools could eventually be used, depending on the final assessment or final conclusions of a complete investigation. Our focus right now is on giving immediate support to the families, working with them to ensure that the remains of their loved ones are brought home to Canada, if that is their wishes, and indeed move forward on a full and complete investigation so that we can then look at next steps in the healing, accountability, justice process. These are things that will come in due course, but right now we are standing firmly and entirely with the families.
Okay, guys, thank you very much.
Merci tout le monde.
So what questions do you want answered out of that investigation?
Sorry, guys.